Hi. I think it could be good to just begin by giving a quick round of applause for both the speakers before me because I'm really nervous and they did an amazing job, so. Great. So when Nadav asked me to speak at this event, I thought he was talking to the wrong person. I mean, first, I wasn't sure if he was even sure. Does he know that I'm someone who had 3 candy bars for breakfast today? I honestly thought that this was all just a typo, but ultimately I believe he still does think I have something to contribute to this discussion. I can't find him in this audience. He may be shaking his head no. Oh no, he's not, that's good. Okay. So part of my issue is that when I discuss self-care, the first thing that I think of is essentially issues that impact Black women across the world, and that's chronic stress. I had this old habit of essentially derailing any conversation I was having on self-care to these broader issues. For example, if someone were to ask me, how much sleep did you get last night? I would then say, 3 hours, but did you know that African American women on average have less sleep than any other demographic, and the quality of sleep is much, much worse? How are you? So there are a few problems with that. One, I said nothing at all about myself and how I was doing as an individual. Not only that, but instead of even having any type of discussion on how I was doing, I changed the topic to something completely unrelated. Not only that, but I even flipped the question back to the poor inquirer to prevent any further questions. Oftentimes, individuals who find themselves in these social justice spaces can tend to look more at facts and research and different topics that are around these discussions instead of looking inward and instead of reflecting on their own experiences. For example, I focused more so on spreading knowledge and on myself, and I focused more so on accommodating the needs of others than looking to the other individual who was talking. Not only that, but this prevents individuals from creating space for themselves to heal and for themselves to look inward. Now, I think it's a good time to talk a little bit about my parents. My mom and dad are my greatest resource. They're also my greatest support system. My parents taught me everything from how to clean an oven, how to laugh loudest at my own jokes, which is somewhat of a flaw, and how to, of course, become my own greatest advocate. My parents also have this habit of essentially giving me advice before I have the opportunity to ask. Does anyone else have parents who do that? Great. Yeah. So my dad does this a lot, and he does it through these you need to statements. For example, he may say, well, okay, I'm not going to use his voice for this because I know that this is being recorded, and he'll watch it online later, and I don't want to get a call that's like, you need to stop talking about me to your friends. See, I can't even do it right. But little did I know that these little you need to statements were tiny, aggressive mantras that oftentimes told me when I was not taking care of myself well. For example, he would often say, you need to go to bed earlier and you need to clean your room. This last year, I was more overextended than I've ever been. My social life and my extracurricular activities took up more and more of my time, and not only that, but I didn't really make as much time for myself. I had coursework, I had friends, and I was just very busy. So to give you a little bit of context too, I don't believe I said this. I'm an RA on campus. I'm also the director of Students Against Institutional Discrimination, which is a racial and social justice group on campus. Cool. So during these times when my social life was becoming more and more busy, I found that I made less and less time for myself. I was always stressed, rarely ate, and never slept. Not only that, but the simple routines that usually kept my life in balance were thrown completely into disarray. Instead of calling my parents every day, which arguably isn't healthy, I went to calling them once a week. And during this time of stress, I oftentimes found my dad's you need to statements as kind of fresh reminders that things were off. For example, I could even picture him saying, you need to eat dinner, and also you need to call me. You know I spent 22 years raising you. He counts the time in the womb, which is kind of odd. But anyways, I oftentimes feel that these social justice spaces are very much trained and made for extroverts. As an introvert who often finds herself in these extroverted situations, I see that as a hurdle as well. The best way I can put this is something I'd like to pull from my RA training a few weeks ago. They essentially told us during times of conflict to think of yourself as a duck floating in water. So are you all picturing ducks? Yeah, nods. Yes, okay, great. So you're seeing a duck, very calm, cool, and collected, but if you look underneath the water, you'll see the duck frantically paddling its feet, desperately trying to stay afloat. So that's me. Like 90% of the time, whenever I meet a new person, whenever I'm in a public place, right now. So I think that it's important to realize that a lot of these spaces are catered towards extroverts. For example, you're always expected to be open, willing to talk, and always accessible in order to hold these different vital roles. The last thing that I'd like to talk a bit about too is essentially how, well, this isn't the last thing. I don't know why I said this is the last thing. But another thing is that an individual is oftentimes expected to live two lives when in these positions as well. So you have your public extroverted self and you have your actual self. For me, in the peak of my self-care stress type of event that happened last semester, those two, the boundary between myself and my public self kind of collided, and as some people like to call it, burnout. When this happened, I really did think that I was alone. I thought that I was the only person who was experiencing this, and this was kind of a comfort to me as well, because, I mean, at least it's not everyone, was kind of my way of looking at it. But when you look at kind of the stress that Black women face in this world, and the fact that we are often expected to extend beyond ourselves, and also we're usually the last to actually say that things are too much. So I realized that many of my friends and people who I do care about who are Black women were going through a very similar struggle and a very similar inner dialogue. So what did I do next? I knew my one friend, Sakona. She's not here, she's probably working. She essentially was going to Spain for a few weeks, and I also knew that I had relatives in Spain for weeks. So I impulsively bought a ticket to Spain. I left, and in simpler words, I ran. Essentially, I realized that the issues that I was having, I felt that I could escape them. I felt that I could run away and they could disappear. I instantly regretted that purchase right after I made it. I thought mostly, why did I do that? I don't speak English, I don't speak Catalan. Well, I do speak English, but not that well. I don't speak Spanish. And so I realized essentially that this was just a bit too much. So I did what I know to do, which is to call my best friend from home. And I said, is this unreasonable? Is this a bit much? I mean, I'm leaving work, I have obligations here. And she pretty much was saying, I mean, yes, it is a bit unreasonable, but I still think that you should do it. So that was the kind of somewhat yes and somewhat of encouragement that I needed to be okay with my purchase. Upon getting to Spain, this discomfort continued. I was working most of it. I mean, for the first week, I spent the whole time working. And even after that, I realized that essentially, in order for me to feel comfortable in this space, I kind of had to go back to those old routines that I neglected in the past. I had to focus on my family who was in Spain, my friends who were also there, and even myself. I focused on eating, sleeping, and also taking care of the previous stress that I had. So what do we do now? Going to leave for 3 weeks is no solution to any self-care dialogue. I think it's unreasonable, and I think that in order for me to be able to do it, I had to cross different racial and class boundaries that I didn't think I was capable of. But I also think that this is one of those pivotal moments where you realize that self-care is more of a journey than a discussion. It's more of a, one, acknowledging where you're at when it comes to self-care, two, allowing yourself to experience and be where you're at and feel what you need to feel in your space. And three, it's self-acceptance. You have to become content with yourself, and you also have to find comfort in discomfort. So what does that mean for you all, and how do we solve self-care for people who are overextended? We don't. It's a journey, and I think that for each person, it's unique to the individual. But I also think on the silver lining side of things, that if you all are here right now, you're partway there. That's all. Thank you.